There's breaking news. There's breaking news. I thought we were going to just talk about Barack Obama, but you know what happened? Not only is Barack Obama using this incident in Minneapolis, there's breaking news. Oh, the second shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota over the weekend. Alex Preddy, I think is his name. In fact, well, here, you know what? We'll just go ahead. Statement by President Obama and Mrs. Obama. The killing of Alex Preddy is a heartbreaking tragedy. It should also be a wake-up call to every American, regardless of party, that many of our core values as a nation are increasingly under assault. Federal law enforcement and immigration agents have a tough job, but Americans expect them to carry out their duties in a lawful, accountable way and to work with rather than against state and local officials to ensure public safety. That's not what we're seeing in Minnesota. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. For weeks now, people across the country have been rightly outraged by the spectacle of masked ICE recruits and other federal agents acting with impunity. And what was it? Acting with impunity. And engaging in tactics that seem designed to intimidate, harass, provoke, and endanger the residents of a major American city. These unprecedented tactics, which even the former top lawyer of the Department of Homeland Security in the first Trump administration, lawlessness and cruelty, have now resulted in the fatal shootings of 2 U.S. citizens. And yet, rather than trying to impose some semblance of discipline and accountability over the agents they've deployed, the president and current administration officials seem eager to escalate the situation while offering public explanations for the shootings of Mr. Preddy and Renee Good that aren't informed by any serious investigation and that appear to be directly contradicted by video evidence. This has to stop. I would hope that after this most recent tragedy, administration officials will reconsider their approach and start finding ways to work constructively with Governor Walz and Mayor Fry, as well as state and local police to avert more chaos and achieve legitimate law enforcement goals. In the meantime, every American should support and draw inspiration from the wave of peaceful protests in Minneapolis and other parts of the country. They are a timely reminder that ultimately it's up to each of us as citizens to speak out against injustice, protect our basic freedoms, and hold our government accountable. So Barack Obama, who I don't even know what this clown's doing, Barack Obama has now stepped into the fray. And he has decided that he's going to lecture the Trump administration on how to interpret the video evidence and also lecture them on how to de-escalate the situation and urge President Donald Trump and his administration to work with Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, when really it's Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who has been unwilling to work with the Trump administration. In fact, I was on Newsmax just this morning, and I know how much everybody loves when I play clips of myself on Newsmax. And we discussed some of Governor Walz's latest inflammatory remarks.
This is an unaccountable, untrained, lawless organization that is terrorizing American citizens. This isn't about sanctuary, not sanctuary cities. This goes far beyond that. This is about a basically Stasi-type force of secret police that wear masks, that are unidentifiable.
I think anyone who votes to give them more money to do this will share in the responsibility and see more American cities, more Americans die in our cities as a result.
Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
Okay, what happened to Anne Frank in World War II is not the same as what's happening in Minnesota at all. Mark, it seems tensions are only growing here. Where does this end?
Well, first of all, are we calling Anne Frank a children's book? It was a diary of a woman who was hiding with her family from the Nazis, not a pop-up book. So Tim Walz would probably need to go back to high school and relive that. Second of all, it's not the sanctuary cities. It's Minneapolis. It's Minnesota. It's defund Minnesota time. What we're seeing here is a targeted protest or a targeted action against federal law enforcement in one city, in one state in the country. As Kristi Noem pointed out in her briefing, in Texas, this happens. We deport more illegal aliens from Texas, and none of this happens. Nobody's getting shot. Nobody's attacking federal law enforcement. Here in Florida, ICE is on the ground deporting people. Nobody gets out of their car or tries to ram ICE agents with their car. For whatever reason, Minneapolis is ground zero for this kind of melee and chaos and scene. And maybe it has something to do with all of of that fraud that they were investigating just a few weeks before all of these riots began. I don't know. We'll have to look into that when the smoke clears. But rest assured that this is not going to stop as long as the current leadership is in charge in that state. Yeah, and the current leadership is Jacob Fry in the Minneapolis mayor's office and Tim Walz in the governor's office. And Tim Walz, he actually, I don't know if he was trying to taunt the president. I don't know if he was daring the president. I don't know if he just didn't think that the president was, listening. But he said this over the weekend as well at his press conference.
So my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state?
Now, funny you should ask, because right after, you ask a question, you get an answer. Tim Walz asked Donald Trump, what's the plan? And Donald Trump went on Truth Social and said, here you go, Timmy boy. Tampon Tim Walz and Mayor Frey should turn over all criminal illegal aliens that are currently incarcerated in their state prisons and jails to federal authorities. That sounds like a good plan. Along with all illegal criminals with an active warrant or known criminal history for immediate deportation. Part of the plan, number one. Number two, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens arrested by local police. Number three, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes. Number four, Democrat politicians must partner with the federal government to protect American citizens in the rapid removal of all criminal illegal aliens in our country. Some Democrats in places like Memphis, Tennessee, or Washington, D.C. have done so, resulting in safer streets for all. And then he goes on to talk about Congress and what they're supposed to do, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I wouldn't hold my breath when it comes to Congress doing anything, because Congress doesn't really do anything. Congress and Attorney General Pam Bondi, they're two of the least effective people or organizations we have currently in the country. And so what happens is Tampon Tim Walz goes, "Hey, what do we have to do, Donald Trump?" And Donald Trump says, "Here's what you have to do, Tim Walz." And guess what? Tim Walz said, "Oh, okay." He decided that he was going to call President Donald Trump.
Good afternoon, Jackie.
And he was going to, bend the knee, if you will. Governor Tim Walz called me with the request, President Donald Trump said, to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor, very respectfully, understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. We have had such tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have touched. And even in Minnesota, crime is way down. But both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. President Donald J. Trump. So Tim Walz goes on TV and says to Donald Trump, "What do we got to do?" And Donald Trump says, "You got to start, helping and not hindering." And then Tim Walz goes, "Okay, I guess we'll do that." So Barack Obama, this is basically what happened. Barack Obama comes out and says, "We need to tell Donald Trump to stop. We need to go back out into the streets. This is unconscionable. Donald Trump has these secret police. Go out in the streets and peacefully protest because Donald Trump is lying about everything that's going on." And Tim Walz goes, "You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and work with Donald Trump because Barack Obama is basically pointless, has no power, and Donald Trump is, we know, calling the shots." And so Tim Walz has done, I think, what everyone has been wanting him to do, and that is working with the federal government to remove the illegal aliens so that ICE can go home and to now stop all of this melee and chaos that's happening in his state. There is a press briefing going on right now. We're going to dip it. We're going to take it live for a little bit because I want to hear the update.
Thank you for that.
About what's happening as President Donald Trump.
Within 24 hours for the states of Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, enabling these states to access critical federal resources to supplement their response efforts if needed.
All right, they're talking about the storm?
Who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien.
Okay, here we go.
I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend.
Here we go.
Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York and, yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities.
This is what we just read from his Truth Social post, by the way.
Active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police.
Yeah, get rid of them.
And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all.
Good luck with that.
American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only.
Way too many
not
rhinos.
for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here.
Way too many.
We hope Governor Walz will
do
the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days. But polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today?
All right, perfect. There we go. We got the update. Same thing that Donald Trump wrote in the Truth Social post.
With respect to the shooting in Minneapolis.
All right, we got a question coming in.
Massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believed I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media in picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday.
I would argue their lives mattered more because they weren't illegal or impeding law enforcement in enforcing the law of the United States of America. So that makes them more valuable to me.
Seemingly encouraged rioters to go out, shoot, and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believe they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him, and he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job."
What's wrong with you people?
This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country.
Hear, hear.
Gabe, go ahead.
or for justifying violence.
I would defer you
actually.
to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Okay.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin.
Now they're talking
Why
about.
did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Now they're talking about Preddy and his gun.
This has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend.
Showing up with a
As
weapon.
for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No.
Mr. Homan is doing an
Stupid.
exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country.
Yeah.
Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders Czar Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead and we will let the facts play out. In this investigation, I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are you keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation.
I would imagine the
think he's made
president
that
knows
quite
more than
clear,
anybody else
with
about the
various
situation going
statements
on
that you've seen
currently.
Put out, and also the
Especially
4
more than anyone in
points
the
that
press
the
briefing
president
room.
has outlined as well to Governor Walz and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts in the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to
Danny.
hear his top
Thanks,
officials
Caroline.
referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments.
Yeah, shut up, lady.
Will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quotes, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents despite...
I don't think Stephen Miller has ever apologized to anyone his entire
Look,
life.
Again, this incident remains under
I'm just saying.
investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the President goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the President continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country.
Yeah, but Stephen Miller's not going to
Kelly, go to the
apologize.
back.
He's
Kelly.
never. I've never heard the words "I'm sorry" come out of Stephen Miller's mouth ever.
Though was a mistake. Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said, we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.
Yeah.
Body camera footage to be released to the public. Now,
That's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Caroline, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications?
Oh, this is a good question. So finally, we have somebody who's asking about the involvement of law enforcement on the ground in Minneapolis and also the elected officials in aiding the protesters, actually putting them in a position where they could be harmed by ICE or communicating ICE's position so that they know exactly where to go so that they could interfere and impede.
Well,
Great
we've
question.
definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country. And these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their job,
Yeah.
and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents
That
we
literally
saw this
happened.
past weekend
It's
in
crazy.
Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these 3 very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot.
Good answer, Caroline.
One is
Good job.
looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan, is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now?
Probably
on the
not.
ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline.
Oh, look at
from
that.
9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants.
Wow.
And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan.
That is correct.
He's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
Man, great job having that article ready to go. Whipping out that Washington Post article from
What the
2016.
purpose of that trip is, what the goals of that trip are.
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business.
Wait, what's
and
the
then
weather
he'll be
like in
giving
Des
a
Moines?
Speech on affordability and on the economy, and I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Preddy expedite that withdrawal at all?
No, they'll leave when the job's done.
To your first question, the answer is yes. He
Yes.
still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
Did Walz ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live, so you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots, there were no protests, nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally
That's all we
common
want.
sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Caroline, In this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Holman there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem
I'm sorry,
make
could you please say it again in
mistake?
English?
If she made any mistake that could lead the president
Got
to
it.
send Mr. Holman to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Holman has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Yeah.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement action?
Yes, they have that right.
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right.
You don't have the right to bite someone
But Americans
else's
do not
finger
have
off.
a constitutional right to impede and obstruct
Correct.
lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again
Correct.
is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
With respect to the call with Governor Walz this morning, the president described it as respectful. He said we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state. Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Holman now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these?
Yes, he's in charge of ICE.
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man, and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country.
See,
Mr. Holman will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
They're not sending Tom Holman out there because everyone else isn't doing their job. They're sending Tom Holman out there to make sure that Governor Walz gets the message that we're serious and we want him to comply with President Donald Trump's wishes so that we can end this faster.
ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
I would wear a body camera 24/7 if I
You're
could.
talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor
In fact, I'm going to start wearing a body camera.
Will the
24/7.
administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Preddy?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second
This is
Amendment rights
ridiculous, by the way, that the left is now trying to claim
The
that.
president supports the Second Amendment rights of
Yeah.
law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement
Correct.
operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms, and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
You're also supposed to let law enforcement know that you have a weapon on you when you're being detained or when you're being approached by law enforcement.
Mr. Holman will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals.
Yeah, by the way, while she's going through the violent criminals that ICE has arrested, let me just remind you about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says that you have that Congress shall make no laws to impede anyone's right to bear arms. I mean, the actual text is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So you do have that right to go to a protest with a weapon, with multiple magazines. But you also have to realize, and you have to understand, and anyone who's been trained or licensed to carry a weapon knows that there are places where A, you're not supposed to have a gun, and B, law enforcement will see you as a greater risk, even if you are legally able to carry a gun. And you should let law enforcement know you have a gun. If you get pulled over for speeding and you have a gun in the car, you're supposed to let the cop know.
So, given that these came after the shooting, what is the this?
By the way, I have a gun in the car, and I just want to let you know.
I've spoken with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and, again, the mayor, who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who, again, are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread, massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend, with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within
we got to talk about her.
One must ask themselves, why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering. Haley.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary Noem. You've made clear the president wants to see the investigation play out when answering some of the questions on the specific details.
She's saying
that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out.
Again, the president believes that these
It's the same question over and over again.
They
It's so
are
stupid.
Continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out.
I feel like they shouldn't allow these people to ask the same question over and over again. It's just a waste of everyone's time, mine mostly.
A broader shutdown.
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package,
That'd be
and
my
we
first
want to
rule.
see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions, as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
And secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday.
Okay.
If you can walk us through with the president, how he'll be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking.
No, he's got people on the ground for that. He's got representatives that he's working with. So on this Second Amendment thing, on the gun thing, again, because this is very important. What Kash Patel said is you can't bring a fully loaded firearm with multiple magazines to a protest, and that is not constitutionally true. But what he meant was, I mean, I'm not going to say what he meant, but I'm assuming what he meant was you can't do that without increasing the level of risk that you're going to be seen as a threat by law enforcement, which I think is which is probably what he meant, maybe not what he said.
Calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the State of Israel, and frankly, for the whole world. The President made made the impossible possible. And so it's great news for the president, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries
I think she's
have
wrapping
also
up.
signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll
Okay.
see you in Iowa tomorrow.
There you go. All right, so she's going to Iowa. So listen, and all of this is all. By the way, if I were press secretary, and I would never be press secretary, I would never be press secretary of the United States of America for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm not a hot young blonde woman. I'm more of a hot older bald man. But typically that it used to be back in the day, you could be a man and be press secretary. There were lots of them. Our buddy Sean Spicer was press secretary, pretty decent one. Not Rahm Emanuel, what's his name? Ari Fleischer, another one. There were tons of them. But now what happened was President Donald Trump has kind of set this precedent where he wants young women. He wants attractive young women. And then Joe Biden just wanted women. No offense to Peppermint Saki or Corinne Jean-Pierre, but he just wanted women. And then Donald Trump came back and said, well, I definitely want a hot young blonde woman again. So that's basically the thing. I think it's part of the job requirement. So it's not gonna be me. But if I ever were press secretary, I would not put up with these multiple questions. I'd be like, asked and answered. Read the transcript. Come on, guy. I go, if somebody asked me the same question that I've just been asked, this thing is over. Like, I would put the kibosh on it. She's way too polite with that, because what happens is somebody goes, Stephen Miller called, Alex Preddy a terrorist and an assassin who was there to blow the heads off of blah, 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 whatever. Is he going to apologize for that? And Caroline Levitt goes, Stephen Miller, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes, next question, you. Yes, but back on Stephen Miller's comment. Nope. I literally answered the question. Next. Like, you got to nip this stuff in the bud, because time's a wasted. And I know that, she's, my time's wasting is when I'm listening to these same people ask the same questions over and over again. It's horrible. It's just something that I don't like. Speaking of things that I don't like, Ilhan Omar, she's in trouble. Ilhan Omar, do you remember last week we played you all these clips of Ilhan Omar at the Capitol building? And it was the woman, I forget her name. She's from Mike Lindell TV. And this woman from Mike Lindell TV, she was chasing Ilhan Omar around the Capitol building, and she was asking all these questions, and Ilhan Omar was mouthing off, and she had lip, and she was like trying to be quirky and funny and ha 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 ha, and she was just being not a nice person. Well, now she's quiet. I don't know if the Department of Justice had a conversation with her lawyer. I don't know if her lawyer had a conversation with her. I don't know if she's starting to feel the heat. I don't know what's happening. But now that there is an investigation into her directly, and I mean her net worth, now that Congress has opened up a direct investigation into her net worth, it is amazing to see the change in her attitude toward questions from the media. Listen to this.
Investigation into your net worth, you and your husband's net worth. They're claiming that it's risen rapidly. What's your response to what they're saying? Do you think they'll find anything in their investigation into your net worth?
Yeah.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar avoiding questions about her net worth that has risen astronomically during her time in Congress. President Trump wants answers. Writing on Truth Social, quote, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is worth over 30.
Yeah. So there you go. That's exactly what's, well, here, we'll watch the rest
of a politician. She should be investigated for financial and political crimes, and that investigation should start now. Saturday Night America anchor Kayleigh McEnany joins me now. It is amazing. When she started in 2019,
speaking of attractive blonde press secretaries,
she had a negative net worth. Her personal household net worth has gone from negative to $30 million, and her husband's Rose Lake Capital firm, a consulting firm, has gone from just dollars up to $25 million in value.
Yeah. Okay. Now listen, I'm going to do something I don't typically do. Okay. As far as her husband's firm goes, right? Like, there's clearly some corruption going on here, 100%. There's clearly, this is a massive windfall. So yes, there's money coming in that is that is probably, I would, if I were a betting man, which I am, I would bet money that there's some kind of criminal activity going on or some kind of corruption. However, there is a value to being the husband of a congressperson. There is a value to running a firm, whether it's a law firm or a PR firm or an investment firm or a banking firm or a consultancy, whatever it is. There is a benefit to being married to a high-profile congressperson, and you will get clients. You will get clients simply because people want to say, I'm represented by Ilhan Omar's husband, or I invested my money with Ilhan Omar's husband, or, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, yes, her husband is my blah, 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 blah. Plastic surgeon, same thing. If you're a plastic surgeon and your wife is a congressperson, you're going to get people that come and get their boob jobs and their liposuction and their butt implants and their tummy tucks and their, rejuvenation. I don't want to talk about the rejuvenation. The rejuvenation, that wigs me out a little bit. All that stuff. They're going to get it from you simply because you have proximity to power. So I don't doubt that when she got elected Congresswoman, her husband was like, oh, hot diggity dog. Now that you're famous, I'm going to get some of the money from your fame because people are going to want to do business with me because I'm married to you. That happens all the time. However, when you look at the numbers, this is exorbitant.
Yes. So what's interesting, you have her husband, Wynette, who started Rose Lake Capital, to your point. So Rose Lake Capital, you noted $42 and then skyrocketed to millions within a year. And these are according to public filings that she put forward, according to documents in a lawsuit.
Her own numbers.
Yes. And it caught the attention of, listen to this, not Trump's FBI, Biden's FBI. So in 2024, Biden's FBI raised questions about this skyrocketing wealth, some of these business decisions, and even Wall Street experts say, why is a former political consultant, that's what Wynette was, running a massive financial firm that, by the way, we've never heard of, and we're on Wall Street and we think we would have heard of it? A lot of questions.
Not to mention they also have a winery that has also experienced a similar, in California, by the way, that has experienced a similar explosion.
Okay, and again, like I said, typically that happens, but again, not from like $42 to $30 million in 1 year. The winery, same thing. If you own a winery and then all of a sudden you get elected to an office or you become, it's the same reason why everyone bought that George Clooney tequila and then he sold it for like $100 million. It's the same reason why everybody bought Ciroc vodka from P. Diddy, because P. Diddy was like, yo, drink Ciroc. And everyone's like, all right. And now he's in jail. But, and I'm not saying Ciroc vodka is the reason he's in jail, although maybe it is. Who knows? Maybe he got a little hammered. And anyway, it doesn't matter. So there is some of that. But again, this is just an exorbitant amount. There was another clip from James Comer. Hang on, I got to find this James Comer clip, because James Comer spoke a lot about what was happening with Ilhan Omar. I mean, he's in charge of the investigation. So let's see. Is this it here? Yeah, here it is.
Republicans turning the heat up on Ilhan Omar.
We'll watch this clip.
They want to know how she got all that money.
This clip is so good.
What are your responses to the Oversight Committee launching an investigation into your net worth, you and your husband's net worth? They're claiming that it's risen rapidly.
Yeah.
What's your response to what they're saying?
It has. Here we go.
House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. All right, Mr. Comer, you were in banking before politics, right? So she suddenly, in 1 year, after being worth a few $1,000s, is now worth $30 million. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, and the way the financial disclosure forms are, there's a big variation. But here's what we know: she went from zero to anywhere between $6 and $30 million in a year. Now, why is that relevant? First of all, I don't know many people that go from 0 to 30 without having a legitimate business. Her husband is in some type of finance business, but we don't know what it is. It doesn't appear to be private equity. Doesn't appear to be venture capital. So we just have questions. What exactly is the business that you're involved in? It was kind of like the same questions we asked Hunter Biden that he never could answer. But then, she won't answer any questions. The Ethics Committee is supposed to investigate members. We're not supposed to investigate individual members, but this business is in her husband's name. So we can investigate her husband, and we are going to do that because we're, as you know, in the middle of this Minnesota welfare fraud. And there's been a lot of accusations about a circle of influential Somali Americans that are benefiting from these financial scams in Minnesota. Her name is on the list. Now, she's going to get due process. I don't know if she's guilty, but what I know is she went from zero to anywhere between $6 and $30 million in a year, and she won't even answer a simple question like you saw there. What did you do?
I mean, it looks very suspicious when you have millions of the Somali cash just flying all over Minneapolis with no scrutiny whatsoever. Wasn't there also a vineyard involved here? The husband's involved in the wine business?
Yeah. There's a thing called money laundering where people have businesses and they deposit, lots of cash. Again, I'm not accusing them of any wrongdoing, but she should answer a simple question. If any member of Congress is asked what business their family's involved in, I've never seen one fail to answer it. That's not a hard question. My husband has a private equity firm and he's done exceptionally well in the last 12 months. She won't answer that question. And everybody in America suspects foul play here. Right. And again, we're going to find out. It's not going to be hard to figure out what business he's in and where the money came from. So that's going to be a central part of our entire Minnesota fraud investigation, because she is the leader in Congress, in the district, in the congressional district where the overwhelming majority of the welfare fraud is taking place. Her name, as well as the Attorney General Keith Ellison's name, have been mentioned as people of interest. I'll put it like that, Jesse. So we're gonna follow through on this, and I think she's gonna have some difficult questions to answer.
All right. Well, if Omar starts painting and selling those pieces of art, then I think we're on to something. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much.
And that's an angle that I hadn't thought of. Is the vineyard a way for them to launder the money from whatever this financial business is? Is this vineyard a way for them to clean out whatever payments are being made into this mystery financial company? And James Comer brings up a good point. You can have an ethics investigation into Ilhan Omar if she breaks any kind of rule in Congress. You can't have a criminal investigation into a member of Congress. Congress cannot investigate each other. However, they can investigate her husband, and that's exactly what they're going to do. The FBI can investigate her. The SEC can investigate her. The IRS, every other organization that President Donald Trump has under his power can investigate Ilhan Omar. And I imagine they probably already are. So that may be why she's so hush-hush, why she's so mum, why she's not saying anything. Also, case in point, look at our buddy Tim Walz, Tampon Tim Walz, who picked up the phone and called President Donald Trump. Did he? Now think about this. Tim Walz has been for weeks taunting the president and yelling about the president and talking about how the president has been turning up the temperature, and he's been talking about how ICE is just horrible and Minnesotans are good people and yada, yada, yada. And he's not helped the president of the United States. He's not helped Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He's not helped Border Patrol. He's not helped anybody. He's not gone to Jacob Frey and said, hey, dude, stop what you're doing. People are getting killed. He's been he's stood behind the gate of his mansion with his little blue bullhorn, and he started yelling and screaming about ICE agents and urging people to go out and get into the streets and all that kind of stuff. Well, now all of a sudden, after this second shooting and some other conversations, Tim Walz called President Donald Trump and said, let's work together. Do we think he did this because A, he finally believes that maybe it's his fault and he should work with the federal government to de-escalate the situation? Or do we B, believe that maybe the federal government contacted him and said, you know what, we have proof of wrongdoing and corruption on your part. We're going to bring that out into the open. And he said, you know what, maybe we can work out a deal. Let's sit down and talk. Maybe he cut some kind of deal with the federal government and said, all right, I'll help you out, but you got to help me out. Maybe he cut a deal to sell out Ilhan Omar or to investigate her on a local level in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. Maybe, who knows? I'm not saying any of this has happened. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't on the phone. All I know is that for whatever reason, Tim Walz yesterday was comparing ICE to Nazis and Minneapolis, Minnesota to Anne Frank. And today he's on the phone with Donald Trump saying, let's work together. People don't change their minds that quickly unless they have a real good reason to change their minds that quickly. And a real good reason to change your mind that quickly would be, keeping your big butt out of jail. Because guys like Tampon Tim in jail, I mean, and I know he's not going to go to jail. How do I know he's not going to go to jail? I know that Tampon Tim Walz is not going to go to jail because I checked online today and Pam Bondi is still the Attorney General. I like Donald Trump. I support his decisions. I think he's a great president. But Pam Bondi, I don't know, man. I don't know. Pam Bondi, and maybe this has something to do with it. Maybe this is the letter where they talk. Maybe I'm misrepresenting her. She had this clip yesterday that went viral, partially because I posted it and 32,000 people shared it. But she had this clip that went viral yesterday about her very strongly worded letter that she sent to Tim Walz.
Rape, homicide, manslaughter. That's who they're trying to protect in Minnesota. I do not understand these people. We sent Governor Walz a very strong letter today. We had been working on this letter. We got it out saying that he better support President Trump. He better support the men and women in law enforcement, because if he doesn't, we are. And that's what we're doing right now.
Were there any consequences in this letter?
Well, we'll see. This is fluid. Let's see how Governor Walz responds. Let's see what he does based on this, based on what's happening right now. But this administration is going to support the citizens. We're going to support our great men and women in law enforcement. Rape, homicide, manslaughter. That's who they're trying to protect in Minnesota. I do not understand these people. We sent Governor Walz a very strong letter today. We had been working on this letter. We got it out saying that he better support President Trump. He better support the men and women in law enforcement, because if he doesn't, we are. And that's what we're doing right now.
Were there any consequences in this letter?
Well, we'll see. This is fluid. Let's see how Governor Walz responds. Let's see what he does based on this, based on what's happening right now. But this administration is going to support the citizens. We're going to support our great men and women in law enforcement.
Okay, there you go. Sorry, I played that twice. So Pam Bondi is basically, she sent him a strongly worded letter. Now, I made fun of it yesterday because I thought a strongly worded letter, I mean, what is that going to, what's a strongly worded letter going to do? A strongly worded letter isn't going to do anything to anybody. That's not going to help anybody. A strongly worded letter, I don't know what that's going to do for anybody. But after that strongly worded letter went out, what did we see? We saw that Governor Walz started to play ball with President Donald Trump. So maybe the strongly worded letter was strong. Maybe there was something in that letter that threatened some kind of action, because after he received that letter, he got on the phone this morning with President Donald Trump. I wish I could see the letter. She was waving it around. I tried to zoom in, but I couldn't see it there at all. Anyway, that's the plan. That's the plan going forward is Donald Trump and Tim Walz are now going to be working together with law enforcement on the ground. They are going to be working together, and they are going to do their darndest to try and make sure that everyone is aiding law enforcement and not impeding law enforcement. That's the only way. That's the only way that ICE is going to be able to get all these illegals out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and make it safe for the citizens there. And at the same time, also make sure that nobody else gets hurt in the process. Listen, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you're listening on Apple or iTunes or whatever it is on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube and Rumble, definitely give us a thumbs up. Hit that notification bell, because we want to make sure that with the notification bell, we want to make sure you get notified every single time we go live. Every single time there's more content for you to enjoy, we want to make sure that you know, hey, it's time to enjoy that content. So definitely hit the little ding-a-ling. Make sure that you're getting everything you need to know when you need to know it, so that you can continue to enjoy the entertainment that comes from Marquez Saves the Republic, the information that we provide you from Marquez Saves the Republic, the inspiration and the enlightenment. We want to make sure that every Catriot listening everywhere knows that together, if we come together every single day, if we support each other every single day, that we will continue to fight, so we can save the Republic.